So I'm just so excited that you took the opportunity to spend some time with me this morning on a topic that I feel is extremely important. As we move into, the 21st, 22nd century, it's extremely important that we have the workforce that's needed to keep our country moving forward. And how are we going to do that? Well, it is through including all voices in the process. So, as I said earlier, I am Dr. Kim Moore, and I am so happy to be here with you. I am a founding partner with the John Maxwell team, and my life mission, what I'm truly passionate about, is helping aspiring, emerging, and senior leaders expand their influence, lead with confidence, and achieve successful outcomes. I'm very intentional about my purpose because I know that in order for people to be successful, they need other people to help guide them on their journey. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am. So early on, I developed a passion for learning, and my grandfather was instrumental in making that happen. I was always a very curious child and loved to explore things and just really understand how things work and why they work. And so when I was growing up, my grandfather, who was probably the typical gentleman that you would think of that was, born in the 1930s, he was very good with his hands, and he did a lot of work around his house and, of course, around all of his children's houses, my mother and my aunts and uncles. And he was always fixing things and doing little things, and I would just tag along behind him, and he would show me and teach me how to do things. So I remember one time our vacuum cleaner wasn't working, and so he came over to look at it. And he started to take it apart, so I just sat there right next to him and watched him. And he then gave me the screwdriver and told me to put it back together. And I really enjoyed that experience because it helped me to understand how the vacuum cleaner actually worked. I took that passion of learning with me when I went to college. And I actually joined our ROTC program while I was in college. And during that time, I can tell you that I grew as a leader because what I learned was that understanding how things work was just as important, or learning how people work, I should say, was just as important to me as understanding how things work. So being in the military gave me an opportunity to hone my leadership skills. So when I retired, and I spent 20 years in the Army, and I was a chemical corps officer, so once again I was in a STEM-related field. When I transitioned from the military, I became an educator. So I actually became a ninth grade science teacher, because my undergraduate degrees are in biology and chemistry. So I became a science teacher, and I loved teaching science because it gave me an opportunity to do the two things that I really enjoyed doing, being a leader, as a teacher leader in the classroom with students, but also teaching science, which I knew was, as I used to say, the most important subject that you could teach. So spent a couple of years teaching, and then I moved downtown or to our central office. And in our central office, I was a supervisor. But in addition to that, I was an adjunct professor. And enjoyed those years of doing that and decided that I really wanted to be back at a school site where I was directly impacting students. So currently, I am a high school principal. And I tell you, running a high school is like I run a mid-sized company. I have 150 people that I work with. I have 1,677 students on my campus every day that I have the opportunity to interact with. And my school is actually a STEM magnet school. So once again, I am blessed to operate in both of the areas that I am passionate about, which is urban education and STEM education. Now, with all of those experiences and opportunities I've just shared, the best job that I've had and the best job that has prepared me for what I do is that I'm the very proud mother of 5 children. Yes, 5. I know. That is quite a number. But I tell you, we love being parents, my husband and I. We have 5 children, 4 grandchildren, and every day is a new experience with our 5 children because they are so different. And you, with 5 children, that maybe one or two of them would be alike. Nope, they're all different. We have 3 boys, 2 girls. And the interesting thing is, our 2 girls are our STEM children. And our 3 boys, we love them, but they're business and history. But we still love them anyway. We're not going to, we're doing better with our grandchildren. The 4 are all geared towards science right now in some shape, form, or fashion, a STEM-based career. So that's a little bit about who I am and why this topic is so important to me. So let me tell you about my school, Middleton High School. Well, Middleton High School is the pre-collegiate STEM academy for Hillsborough County Public Schools. It is a community-based school with a magnet program. And our magnet programs are scientific research, which is our biomedical biotechnology program. We have 2 technical programs. One is our computer science engineering program. In that program, our students earn A+ certification, Cisco networking certification, Cisco security certification, cybersecurity, and a plethora of those technical industry certifications that you would need to do the work that they do, in corporate America. We also have the only Academy of Video Game Design at the high school level. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Kim, are your kids coming to school to play video games? Well, yes, they are. But they play video games to understand how games are created and designed. And so their capstone project, they actually create their own game, a game that they can market, that they could sell and earn money for. So that is the goal of the video game design program. And then we have our engineering program. Our engineering program and our biomedical biotechnology programs are Project Lead the Way certified programs. So those are 4 magnet programs that we have at Middleton High School. And what you should know about our programs is diversity is one of the 4 pillars of Magnet Schools of America. And within our program, we have a balanced approach to our diversity. It is 1/3 white, 1/3 African American, and 1/3 mostly Hispanics, Asian, and others. So Native American group. So we actually have a very diverse group of students, as you see represented in the photos on the screen. So we are very proud of our accomplishments. We have a world-class robotics program. We have a world-class Future Business Leaders of America group of students. We excel in many different areas. not because of the work of myself as the principal, but because of the work that you see on the slide by our students. So let's talk about why diversity and inclusion in STEM education is so important. You know, when we look at research and we look at best practices, it tells us that when we have our STEM education communities that are culturally relevant and that they are using problem-based learning experience as well as being socially justice focused, that it helps students see STEM fields as relevant and meaningful in their lives. And isn't that really what we want? Shouldn't that be the goal of education as a whole? Is for kids to understand, for students to understand the importance of education in their lives and the benefit that it will serve them for the rest of their life. So that is the goal of STEM education. I want you to take the opportunity at this point to write down your answers to the following questions. What do you hope to get out of this webinar, and what would be a win? Just take a moment to write it down. Okay, so what are we going to actually talk about today? Here's our agenda. We're going to talk about what is diversity and inclusion, why is it important, what are the benefits of it, and then some potential solutions, because it's critical that we raise up the next generation of STEM-focused professionals. So if I were to ask you to type in the chat box, what do you think diversity is? I can imagine that a majority of us would think, okay, well, Kim, it's when we have different individuals who are from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different races, different genders. That is what most people think of when they attach the word diversity to a definition. Well, I'd like to give you the definition of diversity from the New Oxford American Dictionary. And notice that basically what it's saying is that diversity is a state of being diverse. Now, isn't that a play on words? But look at the next one, variety. There was considerable diversity in the style of the report, a range of different things. So when we think about diversity, take that definition of the state of being diverse, that it's variety or a range of different things, and apply those terms to people. You see, we traditionally think of the inherent types of diversity. Where is that person from? Their nationality. What's their religious background? Are they Christian or Muslim or Hindu? What's their mindset, which can be shaped and hopefully influenced by their religion? What's their gender or their age? We have conversations in leadership all the time about the baby boomers versus millennials, because depending on our gender, depending on our age, we are affected, or our thinking is shaped by those experiences. Our sexual orientation, race or ethnicity, social economic background, and disability. All of these are inherent types of diversity, and they're what we would consider to be the traditional forms or traditional areas that we would consider when we're talking about diversity as it relates to people. But the Center for Talent Innovation has extended the definition of diversity beyond inherent diversity to include our experiences. Why? Because we know that our experiences shape our thoughts and shape our actions. So when you think about acquired diversity, and these are just a few things that I've listed on the slide, but there are many different experiences that shape our thoughts. But, if you have language skills or you're culturally fluent, maybe you're from Europe versus the United States or from the Caribbean. How does that shape diversity? Because you bring different ideas to the table. Your gender smarts. How literate are you with technology? Do you have any global experiences? As I stated earlier, I'm a retired military officer. And during my 20 years in the military, I had the opportunity to live in many different communities across the United States, but I also lived outside of the country and lived in Germany for 3 years. So that in itself was a very different experience. And it gave me an opportunity because I worked at at headquarters USERA, where there was a joint force there. I had the opportunity not only to interact with my neighbors and community members in Germany, but I had the opportunity to work with a diverse group of military officers from different countries. So once again, that global experience combined with my military experience has helped shape the way I think and the way I act. So when you're talking about diversity, don't limit yourself to the traditional types of diversity. They're very important. But we also want to take in consideration some of the acquired experiences that individuals have that will help enrich the environment. Now, diversity is not individuals. Diversity is groups of individuals. And I need to brag a little right now. This is a picture of my students who competed at a Future Business Leaders of America, which is a student organization. They competed at a competition. And as you look at that picture, you should notice that it is a very diverse group of students. Now you can see the traditional inherent diversity jumping right out of the picture. There are males and females. There's white and African American and Indian and Native American, and just a diverse group of students there. But they also bring very different experiences, the acquired experiences. So some of the students that are represented in this photo were born in different countries. Some of them are military children. Some of them are very technically savvy, as well as some are not. So as a result of that, when they come together, great things happen because they brought home that day 97 trophies. In fact, the number of trophies that they won at the competition, our closest competitor, they beat that group by twice the number. So it was a phenomenal experience for them, and I'm so proud of their hard work and the great job that they did. That is the power of diversity. So then what is inclusion? Because we think sometimes that if we have diversity, then we have inclusion, and that is not actually the case. You see, diversity is the mix, And inclusion is making the mix work. Remember, one of the acquired diversity is that we are blending people's experiences with the traditional inherent diversity. And when we do that well, magic happens because, as you saw, students will excel and reach their full potential. In that previous slide, there were students there that are national champions, meaning they're the best in the country. So why do we need to talk about diversity and inclusion? Why is this topic so important? Because we can look across the country and see that there are different types of kids that look different in classrooms. Why, Kim, is this so important? Well, let me give you some current statistics on different ethnicity groups in STEM fields. So let's look at our white and Asian STEM professionals. Now, this particular demographic makes up 69% of the population, and it's actually down from where it was in 2001 when it was 74%. But still, they are 69% of the population, but they have 87% of the engineering force. They represent 84% of the computing force and 83% of advanced manufacturing workforce. Now remember, they're only 69% of the total population. Now, let's compare that with African American and Latino. This particular demographic, it makes up only 29% of our population. It's up since 2001 from 24%. And what research shows us is that over the next 5 to 10 years, our Latino population is going to grow significantly, and they will become they will become the majority. But currently, they're about 29%. 29% of the total population, yet only 12% of our engineering workforce and 15% of our computing workforce and 16% of advanced manufacturing. Now, in Hillsborough County, currently our Latino population is about 30%. But within the next 5 years, they're projected to be the majority. If we allow that group of individuals, as well as our African American students, if we don't tap into their potential, we will not have the workforce, the people trained to be in the workforce that we need to be successful. Let's look at women. Women are 57% of the population. Yes, we are the majority when it comes to gender. And that number is up as compared to 2001. Yet while we are the majority as far as gender of our population, we only hold 24% of the jobs in the engineering workforce. And 36% of the computing workforce are women. But look at manufacturing. Only 18% of the workforce is comprised are women. So what are we going to do about that? What are we going to do to make sure that we are prepared to compete in a global economy? We can no longer afford to leave any group out when we're talking about preparing and maintaining our competitive advantage. As the population continues to grow and women become more of a force and our minority population grows, we have to tap into their potential, because if we don't, we will not be able to maintain our competitive advantage. So far we've talked about what is diversity and inclusion, and we've talked about why it's so important. Let's talk about the benefits. And I absolutely love the cover of Wired magazine that I've put up on this slide for you. Think about that. The next Steve Jobs. And the expression that's above the title. Genius is everywhere, but we're wasting it. How to unleash the great minds of tomorrow. You know, as a high school principal, I have the opportunity to engage with brilliant students on my campus. These kids amaze me when I talk to them. They are doing things that I've never, ever even considered. And they're doing them as 14 and 15-year-olds in classrooms. It is truly amazing to just walk in and watch them and listen to the discussions that they're having, listening to them critically think through and solve problems. It is really, really enjoyable. So what are some of the benefits? Well, I want to talk to you about 5 benefits of inclusion and diversity. Now, I'm quite sure that as we go through these 5, you're going to think of many more that could have been included as a part of this webinar today. But we're going to talk about 5. And the reason that I picked these 5 is because they touch on many of the challenges that we face and that we see every day as educators with our students. Because remember, our goal is to unleash the great minds of tomorrow. That is the purpose of education, is we want to give every student, no matter who that student is, no matter what their circumstances are, no matter what their background is, no matter what challenges they bring with them onto our campus, our goal is to reach that student, unleash their potential, and give them the opportunity to excel and prepare for life. That's what we do. So let's talk about the 5 benefits of inclusion. Now, I want to tell you, before we actually get into those 5, I want to talk about the value of diversity and inclusion as it relates first to the workforce, because many of you on this webinar today, some are educators, but a vast majority of you are practicing professionals. So you're operating in the workplace, and you're interested in diversity and inclusion because it's impacting your workforce. But what I want to tell you is that when we have a diverse and an inclusive workforce, it drives innovation. Yes. Why? Because you're bringing different perspectives and different points of view, different skills, different experiences to the table to solve problems. See, homogeneous groups come up with homogeneous solutions, and you get groupthink. But when you have a diverse and inclusive workforce, everyone brings together their different points of view. Now we get a more heterogeneous process going, which will fuel, I should say, the innovation that is needed. You also have economic growth. And our goal needs to be global competitiveness. We no longer live within the boundaries of our particular country. We are now competing, thanks to technology, with people around the world. So in order for us to remain competitive and have that global advantage, we must bring in different perspectives, different voices to the table. So it's diversity and inclusion is a very valuable contributor to a successful workforce. What is the value of diversity and inclusion in education? Well, first and foremost, it helps establish a culture and a climate of learning, a culture and a climate of tolerance, a culture and a climate of inclusion, where kids who may not live in a community where they get to interact with different types of individuals, it exposes them and they begin to exchange not just ideas, but they begin to form relationships, friendships, and when that happens, they expand their worldview. It gives us an opportunity to celebrate and to acknowledge the contributions of different people. And it helps kids to understand and learn a skill, and I should say skills, that they will need to be successful in the 21st century. You know, we are preparing kids to solve problems that do not exist today. What research shows us is that a student, a freshman in college, by the time they reach their junior year of college, the material that they have learned in their freshman year will be outdated. That is the pace that we are currently operating in with technology. So does that mean that education is not important? No, it means education is even more important, because what we have to teach kids now is to, one, how to communicate, because they're going to work in a very diverse workforce. They may be on a virtual team and may have members of that team who live in the United States, in Germany, in Dubai, and in China. How do we communicate? How do we critically think through the challenges that they will face? How will they problem solve through that process? How will they data mine through the tons of information that is available to them? These are the skills that students need. How do we work collaboratively as good team members? Our organizational structures are changing. We're moving away from the traditional hierarchy to more of a flat organization. So those 5 skills that I just shared with you are critical. Students are learning how to do these things in their classrooms today, so they will be prepared to be good good employees in your workforce. So the value of inclusion and diversity helps kids to be prepared to do what you, as the employer, need for them to do to maintain your competitive advantage. That is the value of diversity and inclusion in education. So let's look at the 5 benefits. The first one is diverse ideas and knowledge. And I touched on this earlier. You know, when people bring different perspectives to the table, we get different ideas. And I don't know about you, but I'm quite sure you've experienced this, where you've had a good idea, and then you share it with your team, and the team starts to talk about it, and somebody will say, well, what about this? What if we do this? And somebody else says, well, maybe that might not work that way, but what if we try it this way? And then the ideas start bouncing off of each other. And when you walk out, what you have is a great idea. You started with a good idea, but now you have a great idea. Why? Because you've had the opportunity to benefit from the experiences that the different team members bring to the table. So heterogeneous groups breed heterogeneous thoughts and ideas. So when we're looking for the benefit and asking ourselves, why do we need to have diversity and inclusion in STEM education, it's so that we bring different ideas to the table to solve, remember what I said, to solve problems that don't exist today. The second benefit that I want to talk about is it brings diverse skills. Now, I don't know about you as well as, to know what skills you bring to the table, but let me tell you a little bit about me. One of my skills is that I am a very visionary thinker. So I come up with what I consider to be great ideas. They're actually just good ideas, and they become great when I share them with my team and we work through the process. And while I can do detailed work, and I've done it in the past and I do it, it's not what I enjoy doing. See, I bring different skills to the table. So as a leader, what I look to do is to bring people around me who complement my skills, not people who are like me, because I don't need a whole room full of visionary people. I need visionary people, but I also need that detailed person who's going to think about that idea and start to look below the surface and say, okay, what about this? How about that? What is your vision for making this happen? What are your thoughts about what that should look like? I need that other person who's going to do the math and look at the numbers to give us the impact that this decision is going to have on our organization. So the point here is to consider different skill sets. Maybe somebody is a great communicator. They're very good at presenting information, whereas someone else is great at writing information in a concise format. Maybe someone else on your team brings an experience from being from less fortunate circumstances and background, so that when you're talking about how can I make this class, in our case in education, more attractive to all students, they can share with you their perspective. The point is, we all have different skill sets. Let's maximize those skill sets and tap into them to benefit our organization. When we have inclusion and diversity, we get diverse motivations to participate. Now, what you see here is a picture of our world-class and world champion robotics team, one of 7 teams on our campus. And this team, we compete in FIRST Robotics, and we compete in what they're considered to be their FRC component, which are large, huger robots. And then this is the mid-size robots, which is called FTC, First Tech Challenge. Their robot, in alliance with another team, beat teams from China, Latin America, Europe, and across the United States. Over 150 student teams were competing that particular year in this tournament. So our students, Team Masquerade, won the World Championship. And when you look at that group of students, once again, you see the inherent diversity of, different ethnicities represented there, but also Each of those students has different motivations. Some of them enjoy the hardware side of building their robots. Some other ones enjoy the computer side of programming the robot. Some like to drive the robot. Some like to do what they have to do, their engineering notebook. So they want to do the communication. Others just want to be on the team to help support and encourage and rally the team and to help them problem solve and think through the process. Because what we really enjoy about robotics as just one of our activities is that it taps into all 5 of those critical skills that students need to be successful for the 21st century. There's communication, problem solving, critical thinking, their data mining for information on how to improve, and they're collaborating. It is a truly team effort. And yes, you see 2 adults in the picture, but those 2 adults do not build the robot and do not work through the process. They are there to provide supervision. So when we talk about trying to bring in different groups of students into STEM education, we need to connect with those students and understand what will motivate that student to be interested in or to pursue a STEM career. So coming up with different types of motivation is a critical component of the benefits of having a diverse and inclusive organization. The next benefit that I want to talk about is diverse reactions and or interpretations to situations. And this goes back to, once again, the problem solving and the critical thinking skills that students need to learn to be successful in the workforce. How do we motivate team members? By helping them come up with different solutions. The 2 young men you see here are actually Middleton students, and they're solving a very complex problem. Now, I did take 3 semesters of calculus in college for my degree. However, I will tell you that I go and sit in classes and interact with my students, and while I took 3 semesters of calculus, I don't remember a lot of it, and only what I use on a regular basis. And so these kids re-educate me every day, and it is fascinating to watch how they work through these issues by relying on each other. So these 2 students are in our what's called Mu Alpha Theta, which is a math club, and they compete in math tournaments. So yes, teenagers, 14 to 18-year-old students, get up at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning to be at our school by 7 o'clock to get on a bus to travel to a math competition where there will be hundreds of other kids just like them, and they spend the entire day solving math problems. That motivation, what would it take? Now remember, I am the mother of 5 children, and I can tell you, getting 5 teenagers up out of the bed at 6 o'clock in the morning is not an easy task. But when we can bring different kids together, they will motivate each other and bring those different types of solutions to problems that we face. Another benefit of diversity and inclusion is the qualities. So when you bring all of those things together that we've been talking about, the ideas, the skills, the motivation, and their reaction, what do we end up with? We end up with great ideas that will help us be competitive in a global society. So let's talk about some potential solutions. And I want to share with you some research that was conducted by the Amgen Foundation. And what is so fascinating about this particular study is that it wasn't done with adults, but with students. So what you will see here, the results that you see presented here, are from students. So what are students saying about STEM? Well, 81% of the students that they studied were interested in science. 73% were interested in biology in particular, because that's one of the major sciences that we teach in high school. Notice this percentage of 85%. And we think that students don't really listen to the adults, but they do. They do listen to their teachers, because 85% of the students said they were influenced by their teachers. And those teachers in their classrooms, when they're talking about careers and what they do and why they pursued that particular degree or interest, 86% of the students stated classes influence their career decisions. So we have an impact on the choices that students are making. That's so important. 37% of the students said they liked their science class. Now, just one slide ago, we said that 81% of students liked or were interested in science, yet only 37% of them liked their science class. That's a major issue. What do we need to do to improve our classrooms so that students are enjoying what they're doing in the classroom, that it is tapping into what will motivate them because they have an interest? How do we take that interest and convert it into a STEM-based career? Notice that only 32% of the students know an adult in a science-based career. So this is outside of teaching. Only 22% of them knew someone that was working in the field of biology or fields that are connected with biology. And 33% of them have never been in a science club. So they're not getting the opportunities that you see my students have on my campus. And this is national data. So what are some solutions that we can present to close that gap and tap in to the potential that is out there when we start including diverse groups of individuals into STEM? Well, for education, first and foremost, we have to have culturally relevant curriculum and pedagogy. Students need to see themselves or see people that look like them, who are from similar backgrounds as they are, who have similar experiences that they are dealing with, in order for them to be able to make that connection. They have to have problem-based learning experiences. Our curriculums must be focused on teaching the skills that kids know. And the wonderful thing about problem-based learning is that it generates the critical thinking and the problem-solving thoughts or skills that students need to be successful. Our curriculums must be socially justice focused. So they must bring in different perspectives from different groups of individuals. And they have to be relevant and socially meaningful as it relates to STEM careers. So bringing in people who are actually doing the job, exposing kids and making what we call connections to the broader learning. What can I do with this information beyond the classroom? How is it connected to a career? We have some wonderful clubs on our campus, and one of the ones that a lot of kids join is what's called ACE Mentors. And ACE Mentors is a group of engineers and individuals connected to engineering companies. They come in and they mentor students through a project. And this project is a year-long project, and it's a real-world project. So last year, my students did a redesign of Tampa International Airport. And they actually presented, and each of them had a different area. So some had to redo the floors, some redid bathrooms, some redid signage. And they actually presented their product just like you would do if you were an engineering company bidding on a job to the vice president of operations for the Tampa International Airport. And he was very impressed with the work that they did. But those are opportunities for kids to have real-world experiences. We recently did a college and career day for our students, and one of the panelists, or one of the groups that we had, was a panel of STEM professionals. So we had 4 individuals come in that are operating in the fields of STEM. Once again, it was a very diverse group. We had 2 males, 2 females, 2 PhDs. 2 of the 2 PhDs, both were African American males. We had of the 2 females, one was Latino and one was white. One worked in quality. One was a professor, adjunct professor, in addition to a practicing engineer. One worked for Raytheon, a huge company. One worked for a small company. So they brought different experiences to the table. Out of all of the sessions we did that day, and we had about 20 different sessions, the career panel was full every session, and we did 4 sessions. The room was so full we had to bring in chairs, and people were still standing. So not only are students hungry for this type of information, but so are parents. What are some additional solutions that we can have at schools? Well, hands-on learning. As a science teacher, the best thing that I did was to do labs with my students. So we did a lab for every unit that we discussed in class. Because kids, when they can touch it, when they can see it, when they can smell it and experience it, it makes it more meaningful for them. More career-related classes. That is critical. And job shadowing, work-based experiences, volunteering, internships, they all go together because kids need to be out practicing what we want them to learn. You know, as an employer, I know that it's not just about the content, the technical skills that individuals bring to the workforce. When I talk to employers, and we have a great STEM advisory board, which is made up of industry individuals as well as our local colleges and different social organizations. When we meet with them, and we meet with them quarterly, and ask them, what is it that you're looking for from our students? What do you need? What do you want? In addition to those 5 skills that I talked about earlier with the communication, problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, and data mining, they also want individuals who have those soft skills, who know how to dress to come to work, how to get to work on time. You know, those basic things that a lot of times we take for granted. Well, how do kids learn those things? Well, yes, they learn them at school, but they also learn them through work-based experiences. And then, of course, we have to provide them with the career counseling that they need because there are so many jobs out there. One of the events that our students get to participate is through Lockheed Martin, and they do a career day for women. And so we take a group of young ladies out to their facility, and they give them a tour. They have people come in and speak to them. And one of the things they always cover with the young ladies is the different career fields that are represented in Lockheed Martin, but also in the fields of STEM. And it's fascinating because they put up careers that young ladies don't normally think about connected with engineering. Broadening, once again, their horizon and giving them that exposure. So when you think about diversity and inclusion in STEM education, look at these young people that you see from our white coat ceremony. We did this ceremony for our juniors in our biomedical biotechnology program. So what do you see? You see different groups of kids. That's what we want to accomplish. That is our goal, is to ensure that we prepare the next generation of leaders for the workforce. Here are some references that I use. You know, as an educator, we always, as I tell my students, give credit to the people who deserve the credit. So please know that I did use references and work from other individuals. So at this point, I want you to go back and answer the two questions that you had earlier. What did you hope to get out of this webinar, and what would be a win for you? And I truly, truly hope that I've met your expectations today, because I appreciate the fact that you got up on a Saturday morning, bright and early, to be here for this webinar. Now, as we prepare to take some questions, please enter your questions in the chat box, and that way I can read them and respond to them. So if you have any questions, type it in the chat box, and I will be more than happy to address those for you. Okay. All right. I see that Karen is asking, I want to learn more about diversity in STEM education, and my expectations were met. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Karen. That's very kind, and I'm glad that I've met your expectations. And yes, someone wanted to know, James wanted to know, is this webinar going to be available? Yes. A replay of the webinar will be available later today at www.kimdmoore.com. Select the Webinars tab on the submenu. So if you go to my website, www.kimdmoore.com, click Webinars on the tab, and a submenu will come, and you will find this webinar. So I want to say thank you to everybody. This is our FRC robotics team, Team Minotaur, and you can see they were a winner in 2016. So I know I'm a very proud principal of my students. I just enjoy going to work every day. So thank you very much for being here today for this presentation on STEM education and why diversity and inclusion are critical.